this video, we're going to be multiplying decimals by exponents. So we did a lot of review with exponents more towards the beginning of the year, so let's just do a little bit. As I know, 10 to the second power would be 10 times 10 because there's two tens, so it's 10 times 10. There's two tens. I know that would equal 100. And I can remember that because there's two zeros there. 10 to the second power has two zeros. It's two tens. Now we can say 4 times 10 to the third power. We would write our 4 in 1, 2, 3 zeros because it would be the same as saying 4 times 10 times 10 times 10. So as you can see, every time we add an exponent there, we're making it that many times bigger. So 4 times 10 to the third, we're making it 1,000 times bigger. So it'd be 4,000. We're going to do the exact same thing with our decimals, except it's going to take a little bit of decimal point moving to make sure we get the right answer. So for example, let's look at this very first one. We've got 2 7/10 times 10 to the third power. So over here, I'm just going to write 2 7/10. So since it's times 10 to the third power, I know I need to move that decimal point 3 times to the right. Because this would be like saying 2 7/10 times 10 times 10 times 10. So we want to take that decimal point in 2 7/10 and move it 1, 2, 3 times. There it is. 3 swoops. We're going to add our zeros in, and our decimal point is now here. So my answer becomes 2,700. 2,700. I kind of skipped that expanded form, but we wrote it over there. So we have 2 7/10 times 10 times 10 times 10. Remember, there are 3 tens there because 3 is our exponent. So I know you're probably thinking, but Miss Wilson, there's not 3 zeros there. That's because we had a decimal point. Since our decimal point was in between the 2 and the 7, when we swooped it out 3 times, we had to add 2 zeros. Looks good, looks good. Let's go ahead and look at this next one. This next one, they just give us the standard form of 3 2/10. So we have to decide what we want it to look like as an exponent form, an expanded form. So if we have to swoop it to the right to get our answer, we're going to swoop it to the left to find our expanded and our exponent form. So I'm going to say swoop it 1 to the left is going to get me 3/200 times 10 to the first power. Now let's go back and see why we did that. If I have 3/200 times 10 to the first power, I'm going to move my decimal point 1 to the right, and I'm going to get 3 2/10. We're just kind of doing it backwards to understand it on this one. So for this one, we would get 3/3200 times 10. So making 3/200 10 times bigger would just be moving that decimal point 1 to the right to get 3 2/10. Looks good, looks good. Let's look at this next one, and then I'll have you start trying them. For this next one, I've got 3/10 times 10. Now let's see, it's times 10 to what? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 10. So I know it's going to be times 10 to the fourth power. 3/10 times 10 to the fourth power. So we are making it 10,000 times bigger. We're going to be swooping that decimal 4 times. So here's my 3/10. We're going to swoop that decimal 4 times to the right to make it bigger. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Now my decimal's here. So we're going to add our zeros in, and we get 3,000. Remember, that 4 means we're swooping our decimal point 4 times to the right. So our answer is going to be 3,000. Let's jump down to this one. Let's skip the next line and jump down to this one. 6/700 times 10 to the second. I want you to see if you can write the expanded form of 6/700 times 10 to the second power. For this one, I'm going to erase some of my work. You can leave your work on your board, but I don't have much room to work stuff out today. For this one, we had 6/700 times 10 to the second power. So I had 6/700. Now, times 10 to the second power means I need to make it 100 times bigger. So I'm going to move that decimal point twice to the right. 1, 2. And now it's going to be here. So my answer is going to be 67. I forgot to write it out in expanded form. So I hope you already did both. We had 67 hundredths times 10 times 10 was our expanded form. Looks good, looks good. Go ahead and move on to that next one. I want you to write it in exponent form first. Exponent form first. For this one, you should have just copied your 9 and 12 hundredths over times 10. Now let's count our tens. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the 5th power. 9 and 12 hundredths times 10 to the 5th power. Now I want you to see if you can turn that into standard form. For this one, you should have said 9 and 12 hundredths times 10 to the 5th power means we need to swoop that decimal 5 times to the right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and now my decimal goes there. So let's go ahead and add in those 3 zeros. So my answer was 912,000. Looking good, looking good. This next one, this middle one that we skipped, is kind of a hard problem. So I'm going to go ahead and help you make the exponent form, and then you can make the expanded form. So for this one, I have 1,800. Remember, we pretend the decimal is at the end. Now we need to see how many times we need to swoop it to get to 1 8/10. How many times do I need to swoop this decimal to get to 1 8/10? I hope you said 1, 2, 3 times to the left. That'll get me 1 8/10 times 10 to the 3rd power because I swooped it 3 times. Now remember, if I have 1 8/10 times 10 to the 3rd power, 1, 2, 3, that would get me 1,800, which was our original answer. Let's go ahead and write that expanded form in. 1 8/10 times 10 times 10 times 10. Looking good, looking good. Make sure you have all the correct answers written in, and let's get started on that classwork.